Nothing, go marching on in. Nothing, go marching on in. Well, you know I wanna be, oh Lord, be in the number. Nothing, oh Lord, go marching on in. Well, after a while, it will be over, Lord, and after a while, the sun will shine. Well, and all of the dark clouds soon pass over when the same. Oh, yeah.
Well, I went to graduate school in Minnesota, and then I was applying for, I had a degree in journalism. I was applying at newspapers in the South and got a job in Columbus, Georgia, working for the Columbus Ledger. And this was 68 or 69. And so we moved to Columbus, my wife Kathy and I. And then one day, we'd lived there for 6, 7 months. I said one weekend, I said, man, why don't we go out in the small towns around here and see if there are any blues singers. So we took off looking. First person we found was Jim Bunkley in Geneva, Georgia.
I'm going downtown, get me a rockin' tail, let my baby draw me on the way from here, what you choking.
He lived in this tar papered shack. You just see the tar paper over it. No other houses around it. I can still see it today. You ride up this little driveway. We met him. He was so friendly, invited us in, ready to play. For a number of months there, till many months, in our spare time, like in the evenings, after work, or on weekends, we would go to towns actually pretty far from Columbus. You know, Waverly Hall, Tarleton, just all down in there. And we never went to a town without finding a blues singer who could do at least a few great blues songs. The ones I recorded the most were Bunkley, George Henry Bussey, of the very musical Bussey family in Waverly Hall, Georgia. They even had a fife and drum band that I had, you know, people thought they were just in Mississippi where I had recorded some, doing old style music like West African. But there they were, unbelievable. Totally undocumented, as far as I know. And no one from that area had recorded during the heyday of blues recordings during the 20s and 30s. It had a style to the music, kind of a frolicking style, like that's what they would call things. You know, they'd be playing at frolics, maypole dances. That sound that they would pole planting, that sound was kind of behind a lot of that style that was unique to the area. The Bureau of Cultural Affairs in the city of Atlanta had started something called the Georgia Grassroots Music Festival, bringing together old-time musicians from Georgia. And the head of the bureau asked me at the time if I would take that over. They said, you know, let's really find all the musicians in the state, get this thing known. One of the best I found, and at the very beginning of the festival, and who never came to the festival, was a man named Cecil Barfield that had been written up and found by a guy named Jim Pettigrew for a magazine back then called Brown's Guide to Georgia. And they wrote a story about him. And I read the story and said, hey, I want to hear what this man sounds like. And they told me where he lived and went down and listened to him. And I said, man, this man has a style all his own and can do so many different kinds of things. He can do things that sound like the Mississippi Delta and then just the old Chattahoochee Valley style.
You know, if you have a stereotypical idea of a poor blues singer in a rural district of Georgia, he would fit that. I recorded him a couple times. Once was with Alan McLeod for a radio series that working out of Georgia traditional music, and my son Neil did some video of him. I was very impressed with him. His music, and on one of the recordings, you know, after he finished, I asked him how he puts together a blues, and he said something that I think was as good a description of the creative process as I've ever heard. He said, in mind, heart and mind. He said, what your heart said, your mind be right along with it, and what your mind says, you got to get your fingers with it, and you get all that together. And all you gotta do is just play it. And the more you play it, the more it comes to you.
And you said you have to get it in your, first comes from your heart, and then...
Mind, yes, sir. Cause you get it by heart, you go forth and make the music and do the singing. But if you ain't got it in your heart, you get out. You gotta get it first. Get it down first in your heart. And you can lead it out by your mind. There's no way in the world you can do nothing without your heart.
When he came to play, he had been to Columbus. He said, I've been to Columbus before, but it had been like 40 years before that, and he didn't travel much. So we had to send somebody down to, he was living right outside of Plains then. We sent somebody to pick him up, bring him to Columbus. I'll never forget, he brought his own water. He didn't want to drink Columbus water, so he brought a jug of water with him.
The only bad experiences I ever had, negative experiences, were with white people that lived in the area. Because we were recording, we were about finished, but I hadn't interviewed him or anything for the liner notes. And I wanted to record him some more. I mean, but we had enough of record. When someone pulls up a pickup truck, a white guy comes in and says, hey, y'all gotta get out of here now. And I said, why? And he says, because this house belongs to his father, who lives in a plantation hill house right up that hill. See it? He says, get out now. I said to Cecil, I'm real good at talking to all kinds of people. Let me go. I believe I'll go talk to him, see if I can explain to him what we're doing there. Cecil says, George, I don't mean to hurt your feelings or anything, but I don't think you'll succeed. And I said, well, we'll see. And I went up there, and this man stopped out of his house. You know, at the time, Jimmy Carter was running for president. The week before, on the cover of one of the news weeklies, it talked about the racial progress in Plains, how things look pretty good in Plains. And that's where this was taking place. And the man said, listen, buddy, niggers and white people are in the same house down here. We don't do that. You get the hell out of here. Matter of fact, I'm going and calling the sheriff right now. So I said, well, looks like Cecil was right.
Precious got paid to teach Jake, my son, and a couple of other kids on a weekly basis for, I guess, 6 months or so. At the time we're doing the folk festival, he was a little bitty kid. He was, like 6, 7 years old. When he got to be a high school student, he was beginning to be kind of serious about learning to play traditional music. Mm-hmm. So we wrote a proposal to the Georgia Council for the Arts for Precious to be in the master apprenticeship program that they had going in. So Jake would drive up. By the time he had his driver's license, mm-hmm. and he would drive up to Precious's house once a week, and they'd play together for a couple hours.
I recorded a little bit of Precious, Brian. Of course, George recorded her. I think he sort of found her in the context of her family, and it was her father and I guess an uncle was in one of the fife and drum bands that we were talking about a little earlier.
Well, it finally started getting to the point, I'd be on the road 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, looking for musicians, blues musicians. And I might find somebody once a month. They were dying out. Young people were not keeping it going. And by that point, there just weren't many left. And I decided it was time to do something else. As my kind of going out thing, I said, what can I do? I said, let's see about organizing this huge blues festival. And we call it the National Down Home Blues Festival, and get the best blues artists from every state in the South and from the North. And I was able to pull it off, to get the money and get the people there at the Moon Shadow Saloon in Atlanta. And it was a big success. There were people lined up around the block to get in, and the musicians were all at their best because they were playing for their colleagues, their best known colleagues, blues colleagues. So that was a thrill.